Well, good afternoon, everybody out there in YouTube land, and I hope that you're having a great time and that everything is going swimmingly and in your preferred direction. Now, I thought that it's been a while really since I did a story, and I know that some people actually like the stories. And the one that I have for you today is about a big, well, yeah, you'll find out what happens in the story as the story goes on. So, what it was is about 2 or 3 years ago, a friend of mine invited me onto an investigation, a paranormal investigation, and it was at a derelict castle. Basically just remnants there, really. It was a shadow of its former self. But the castle had been there for some 1,200 years, I think it was. So it had been there for a very, very, very long time. Very, very, very long time. And she invited me because they'd had some very good experiences there, and one particular experience which kind of tweaked my interest and made me fall over myself to attend this investigation. And what it was is you drive up to the castle, but you can't actually get into the grounds of it. It's probably around about 200 or 300 yards away from the actual car park itself. It's actually in Norfolk. And so you have to walk from the car park into the entrance, or the original entrance of the castle. And then you have to walk through probably, I don't know, let me think, not quite a quarter of a mile, but not far from it to get into the dead centre of the castle. And so we turned up this evening, and the reason I wanted to go is because previously, and it had happened, well, this one thing had happened on this particular occasion. It was about 6 months, 7 or 8 months maybe before I attended. And what it was is they went as a team, and what they did is they started at one area, and then to cover as much of the castle as possible, they decided to do lone vigils or lone investigations. So the first point where they started from, dead centre of the castle, if you pardon the pun, there was the remnants of a stone staircase, and it kind of went up to nowhere. Obviously there was a floor there at one point, but it had just completely gone. So it was quite an odd looking thing. It went up to nowhere, so it took you and led you nowhere, and then down at the bottom there was nothing. So it was a kind of a stairwell, an ancient stairwell that was stuck in the middle of a field with these bits and bobs of what used to be a castle around it. And so they dropped, well, they asked who wanted to take the watch, this particular watch, during the investigation. And one young man, now I must tell you this, the people that were in the team were ex-police officers, ex-prison officers and serving prison officers, paramedics, nurses, ex-military. So these are all professional people, and they're all, one of the main parts of their job, their career, is to be aware of what's going on and to kind of register things as they happen. So the first guy, the guy they left there who put himself forward, was a serving prison officer, but he was ex-military as well. And they went off to their various points around the castle, leaving him at the initial starting point to investigate where this staircase was. And as far as they knew, everything was fine. So on the way back, they collected each other, came back in, probably maybe an hour and a half later. And the guy was stood there frozen to the spot, absolutely in complete and utter the grip of terror, the grip of fear. Absolutely not shaking, pure white, hair almost on end from the way they described it. And they had to get him out of the castle, away from the grounds, to calm him down. He couldn't speak. He was so terrified, the poor chap, that his actual voice had got stuck. He just couldn't bring himself, that was that much fear in him, he couldn't bring himself to talk. And what happened when they'd calmed him down, got him away from the investigation, gave him a nice hot, sweet cup of tea, plenty of sugar, which works wonders, he started to relax, calm down, and divulge the story. And the story was that he was standing there on a lone vigil, doing nothing, and he felt a little bit odd, strange, as though something was afoot, as it were. And as he looked to the top of this ancient stairwell, he saw what he explained as, or he described as, a knight come down from the top, walk down to the bottom, didn't have a helmet on, but he had the rest of the regalia, looked over him in this chap's direction and acknowledged him by just nodding, then walked off, completely vanished, completely evaporated right in front of him. Now, it put the fear of the Lord into this chap, and I don't know if he went investigating again. I don't think he ever did. And I think he was quite a newbie to ghost hunting anyway. And but he had this great, wonderful experience. Maybe he wouldn't see it as wonderful and great. He probably does now, in all fairness, looking back. So, of course, they asked me, where would you like to go down? Where would you like to stand? Where would you like to investigate? The words were getting stuck in the back of my throat because tumbling out of my mouth, I couldn't tell them quick enough. I wanted to stay by that stairwell, by that staircase, in the hopes that, history, as it were, might repeat itself. Now, this spirit clearly was of the intelligent form. This wasn't a place of memory. This wasn't something that had been absorbed into the natural fabric of the building or the land itself. This knight, as it were, was fully aware of what was going on around him because obviously he'd acknowledged the other chap. And so I waited there. But before they could leave, I looked up to the top of the stairwell, stone steps, and right at the top, I shouted for them to look. And it was spiritual for me, but it was exciting for them as well, because right at the top, coming down, was this large cat. And this cat came right the way down. Now, I must have been maybe 20, 25 feet away from this stairwell. I was at the closest point. And it come down, stopped, looked at me, a bit fearful, and then just kind of loped off into the tall grass. And it ran probably about 500 or 600 yards from us, right up onto the top of an embankment, looking down onto us. And you could see it. And as you flashed the torch up there, you could see this cat's eyes. Now, I've worked with wildlife most of my life, and I knew exactly what it was. And it was a European or Eurasian lynx. So it was wild. They're in the middle of the Norfolk countryside, going about its business, not doing any particular harm that I could see, just trying to live its life, and obviously more fearful of us than we were of it. But it was a beautiful looking animal. And I was able to identify it because A, I got that close, and B, because of my history of working with those type of animals, and even that specific animal or species myself. Now, there's a lot of umming and ahhing as to whether there are big cats, medium cats out there, wild cats, hunting and foraging in the wilderness, and it's not too far a stretch of the imagination to actually realise that it's quite doable for them. These animals find the most empty and barren of areas to live in, to exist in, only coming back into sort of urban areas when it's very, very dark, or when they know that it's very, very quiet, like this one did. Not expecting to see me at the bottom of the steps, shouting to get the other 5 or 6 people to look in the direction. So we all saw it, so we all verified it, and then I could verify what it was. You've got to remember as well that it was legal for people to keep anything they wanted up until 1976. You know, you could go into Harrods and you could buy, well, actually somebody did buy a lion in there. You could buy a tiger, you could buy an elephant, you could buy exactly, if you had the money, you could have it. But 1976, the government drew up a legislation and they passed it as an act in Parliament and it became law. And the law was the Dangerous Wild Animals Act of 1976, which meant that you no longer were allowed to keep those type of animals. If they were considered wild or dangerous, you were no longer allowed to keep them. So rather than hand them over to zoos or what have you, a lot of the people that own them, be it rock stars, a lot of farmers own them as well, what they did is they just released them into the wild and let them go their own way. And, you know, that's why, even today, you know, we have them in the wilderness. Or wilderness, what little bit of wilderness we've got left in this country. Actually, we've got quite a bit. But that's why we've got them there. So, yeah, so it was a very exciting evening. And one that I'll never forget. But that's not the first lynx I've seen. I saw one many years ago when I was out with my dog walking over in Enfield in a woodland there. And it was up a tree. And as I walked through, it looked down, I looked up, the telltale ears and the markings on its body. And it leapt from this tree, probably about 20, 25 feet up in the air, hit the ground running, and it was off. It was terrified. Terrified of me, terrified of my dog, which was a German Shepherd at the time. And all it wanted to do was get away. I don't have any problem with these animals living in the wild. You know. The chances of seeing one is so remote and so rare. I mean, I know I've been lucky, I've seen 2 of them. And I also know for a fact that there's actually one in the wild not far from where I am. Or there used to be one in the wild not far from where I am. And I'll tell you that story another day. And I'll tell you exactly how I know for a fact. Didn't see it, but I know. And I'll tell you why. So thanks very much, guys. I hope you enjoyed that little story. You might find it boring. You might find it interesting. For me, it's great because it's got both things I love more than anything in the world. It's got wild animals and it's got ghosts. So, yeah, I enjoyed it. Speak to you soon, guys. Bye now. Bye.